Hey friends, this is Brian Foreman with the Campbell University Center for Church and Communities, and I'm thrilled today to be joined by Campbell alum the Reverend Thomas Greene, the pastor of First Baptist Church of Irwin. Excited that Thomas is with us, and always fun to talk to Thomas. So I know I don't have to worry about a good answer to this question. So Thomas, tell me what's good.
Oh, friends, Brian, it's good to be with you, but also there are a lot of good things going on right now. I know particularly in a time where there seems to be the inability to see the good. I know particularly here in the town of Irwin, there are a lot of good things going on, and maybe not in big macro ways, but in micro ways. Looking at First Baptist Church of Irwin, we've been able to reach out to people in a way that we've never would have probably thought about it. It kind of pushed us a little bit into doing things outside of the four walls of our church, which has been good. As moving our services online, which every single church in the world has now decided that. Did you, Brian, let me ask you, did you know that the internet existed and you could stream services? Oh, I didn't know that. Online tithing, did you know about that? So anyway, but being serious, we've had the opportunity to be the church, whether it's hosting nonprofits in our building that are looking for space. By that, I mean like blood drives, being able to assist people with that, being able to let our buildings that are not being utilized be used for people to come in and distribute food, to do different things like that. We've been able to do that. As a pastor, I've had the opportunity to go around. Thankfully, I have connections to Bernie's, which is good for the missional side of it, but not necessarily your weight. To be able to have had members step up and say, hey, we want to do something. And so to be able to go to our homebound members and to leave maybe some boxes at their door, not running up there and leaving them and running away. So to avoid contact, and to call them on the phone and let them know that they're being thought of and being loved, and not just our church members, but people as a whole. And seeing people step up and say, what can I do? What can I do for not just the church, but for the community? What can I do to be the presence of Christ at this time? And so that energy has been very, I know it's made me feel good. I feed off of stuff like that. So a lot of things are good. A lot of things are good.
Well, quick shout out to Bernie's. Can you describe for those who had not experienced Bernie's yet, just what Bernie's is?
When we hear the term manna from heaven, and we think about what it was possibly like, Bernie's, they're these wonderful croissants, but they're more than just that. They do cakes, they do pies, they do so many different things, but their croissants are their big thing. And, oh man, look, like, I'm on a diet, Brian. And see, this is like an ulterior motive here to like bring up oh man, I can just vision it now as I'm looking at my hands. But they're wonderful glazed croissants, kind of like a bready donut type thing. So, but they're awesome.
That's awesome. So y'all are supporting a local business. They're taking care of your church members. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Hey, that's exactly right.
Okay. So you talked about some of the things your church members are doing to step up. What's driving some of that? Is it, do you think they're doing it as just being good neighbors, or is it a response to their faith in the midst of this? Have you had many conversations with folks about sort of what's driving some of this for them?
I think on both sides. I think you have some people who are saying, from a spiritual perspective, we're called to love our neighbors. And the good piece to that is, I think it started out with, in the very beginning, how can we love our neighbors? And it really was, how can we stay in contact with our church? Mm-hmm. But in the process, neighbor has began to be defined. Being outside the church, not attending in a sanctuary, has kind of helped define for my particular church what neighbor is bigger, as they've seen people joining in on the online services, wanting to be connected. People who have never walked into the front door of our church, that they're recognizing what it means to be a neighbor. And so that to them has been reaching out, phone calls, being more intentional and contacting each other, because they have to now. That's their way of communicating. A little solitude for a long period of time will cause you to want to be connected. 90-year-olds learning how to use YouTube for the first time, people who are resistant to specific things. And so seeing that, worried, I know I had someone call me yesterday and ask who needs their yard mowed. Is there someone in the community are there people in the community that could use just some work in their yard, and I'll be sure to stay away. That's what they made the comment. But small things like that, all the way to financially, who needs help right now in this crisis. And so it's been amazing to see all ends of people using their gifts and talents, however small they are, from mowing the lawn of someone's house to wanting to share food or cook for them, or wanting to go out and get basic needs for our seniors and other people in the community. It's been go work in the Duma food pantry that is over and done. People who are wanting to get active and to, really work during this time for them, for the sake of humanity, for doing something for humanity, or doing it because of their spiritual calling.
Yeah, that's awesome. So often we think of, so let me be careful to not paint with too broad a brush, but it was easier before all of this to think of service as a program, to think of it as a giving, maybe even a something we give towards, right? Whereas now it's really looking around and paying attention and noticing what people around us need. How the simple things of having good health and a good lawnmower are assets to really use to care for others and let them know that they're loved and that they're seen, right? Thomas, a lot of people, I think, in your congregation probably get that from watching the way you lead. So I'm curious what ways you were talking to people about how, you talked about just a minute ago, them recognizing their neighbor and that expanding, but I'm curious how you challenged your own congregation to think differently during the pandemic.
I appreciate that. I think, I learned at Campbell especially, the leader doesn't necessarily institute the change, but the leader kind of sets the pace for how people respond and how people follow. And so then that takes a lot of time. But I think we've really been hitting on this when we realized, as most churches did, that the coronavirus was going to be what it was, that we were going to be shutting down, and everybody was scrambling about how are we going to do church, and different opinions. I think, and I don't want to steal Paul Baxley's words, but I reminded them even then, even though he said more eloquently, the church isn't closing. The church is not closing. We're going to continue to be the church during this time. And the biggest thing was God is reminding people that God is not in the real estate business. Just because we're not meeting in the four walls, and I love that. And I think that's part of what it means to be the church. That nothing was changing, that even now we were leaving. And I always remind my congregation, when they leave, you are now entering the mission field. And so there was kind of a mandate, a heartbeat of mine that I hope that went to other people, that you are now entering the mission field. The last Sunday we met, and even now as we continue online, we remind each other that we are now entering the mission field. And so it's kind of been an extended mission. They've an extended kind of opportunity to wake up each day for those who are not essential or working or anything, to ask the question, what can I do today for the sake of Jesus, if you will, the sake of Christ? What can I do, whether it's something small, and everyone has a way, calling 3 people, just hearing a familiar voice can change the pace of the day for some people, to just so much. We're on mission, and there are so many opportunities that are presenting themselves that we've had to adapt to. And so it's been a wonderful thing. And I hope that I continue to spur people to wanting to do good deeds. we're not closed. We're continuing, and even if it's a little bit longer before we open up again, we're continuing to be the church, and actually more so in this time than we were before. You want to talk about evangelism in the sense of relational evangelism, of getting to know your neighbors and who they are and figuring out what your community is about. Wow, we've gotten a pulse for that because we've been forced to, which is, I think, has been a good thing.
No doubt. Yeah. So let me sort of take a little directional shift off of that very thing. You, before the pandemic, were already more than just a pastor to the church. You were building a larger presence in the community as a whole. Can you talk about some of the places where you're involved in civic life in the community beyond just being being pastor of the First Baptist Church, but where you're also involved in community life as well?
Yeah, I'll say too, and it sounds like I'm, patting Campbell on the back, and I am a little bit. But from my experience,
we'll take it.
We'll take it. But from my experience there, I think it equipped me to kind of have an understanding of what my gifts were from moving from Campbell Divinity, but also being on campus, to recognizing ministry of presence is important. Being seen, being part of the community is important. Saw that from, Faith Beam all the way to my last couple of years when Dr. Creed moved on campus, right across from where I was living. Here is a president that is living on campus with all these loud, raggedy, crazy students. And so when I went to the community of Irwin, my intention was not necessarily for myself, but to be involved and to figure out what was going on in the community I served, because what's good for the community and what affects the community also affects the church. And so there was a need for us to move in the community, for people to see that the pastor lives in the community, and to get involved and to get to know other people there. And so the Chamber of Commerce was one of the first things I got involved in, the Lions Club in the process. So I am a Lion, and also, man, I'm trying to remember if there's some other things, but the Lions Club, the Chamber of Commerce, some other boards that are in the area, to be able to, like CareNet board, because CareNet is here in our community, and it's a wonderful benefit to us, but also to people in the surrounding areas, to get involved and to hear people's stories, to get to know the community, for people to know me and to be able to trust me as not just a pastor, but as someone who's there and who is advocating on behalf of Irwin. Not just for my church, not just for with ulterior motives, but to intentionally want to get to know people. And so starting the Irwin Ministerial Association back up, that's with a process through that, ecumenically looking at things and bringing people more together instead of being fractured. So I don't know if I did a good job of answering that. I think maybe a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
One of my spiritual gifts is rambling. Remember that.
No, I think you did a great job to talk about how you're not only involved in community organizations that are faith-based, right? It's not just the Ministers Association, although I love that, getting involved in the Ecumenical Ministers Association. But advocating for the town. I mean, when you talk about, I want to advocate for Irwin, not just my church. I mean, that's a really important thing for clergy to do. And it's sometimes intimidating and somewhat overwhelming. I think people worry that they're going to get roped into too much, that they, too many other things that they don't have time for. But you're making time for those things.
All right. I think I intentionally, when I was developing my covenant with the church, made the statement and made them understand. And I think that's the way you go about it, is that I wanted to be a community pastor. I didn't want to sit just in my office all the time, all day. That there would be times for that, of course, for study, for administration, for wonderful purposes, but that it was vital for a pastor to be eating to drinking coffee in a local coffee shop, to be there, to be maybe eating at Bernie's something that your wife may not want to see you eat at the house, and so eat it real quick there. To eat at the pizza house and to take people around and for people to see you. Ministry of presence. I mean, people know you're there. They don't just know you're the pastor of this church and you exist somewhere, but you're in the community. People see you. And because of that, people will want to come to you and reach out to you, not for the sake of growth, not for the sake of elevating yourself or your church, but for the sake of, that's what we've been called to do, is to be present, not for any other motives.
Yeah. Normally I conclude these calls by asking the person to say, hey, share a good word with us, but I just want you to repeat what you just said about what our call is, and let that be our closing word, and a good word for folks to keep in mind as an encouragement. So do you mind sharing for us again what our call is, Thomas?
Yeah, I simplify it throughout the course of time, whether it's at the beside the bed of someone who is in the process of passing, whether it is at a local sporting event or game that's happening in the community, whether it is at a town hall meeting, whether it is at a restaurant, whether it is at the house of someone sharing a good meal. People will never, typically, with all the funerals I have done and different things, they will not remember exactly what you said, but they will remember that you were there. Mm-hmm. And so ministry of presence, being present in the community, being present in other people's lives, that's our calling, I think, as ministers, to be present. So, and that's one thing that we all can do. So just being present. So.
Well, thank you for the good ministry you're doing there in Irwin, and I appreciate you finding ways to be present even when we're keeping our social distancing, right?
That's right.
It's not easy for us extroverts. So
no, it's not.
So I appreciate the good work that you're doing and for sharing with us today, Thomas.
Brian, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Take care and be well.
You too.